Welcome to Stormin Chocolate. I'm Stormin Norman. This week we'll be going over Mike Oldfield's She Moves Through the Fair from his album Voyager. This was Mike's 17th album, if you include the album For the Killing Fields, which is a soundtrack, and therefore I don't count it. However, once you get beyond 6 or so albums, it doesn't really matter. You're not really making a sophomore effort. You're not trying to rediscover yourself. And so it doesn't really matter which album this is, but it's way down the road. That said, it was his third album on Warner Elektra Asylum after his acrimonious split from Virgin, because he felt that they weren't promoting his albums all that much anymore. So after one last album for Virgin, which was called Heaven's Open, under the moniker Michael Oldfield, he went over to Warner and he produced albums for a long time until 2003. The first album he created for Warner was called Tubular Bells 2, which was an update or a reimagining of the original Tubular Bells 1. It had kind of the same structure. It was in two parts, part 1 and part 2, and it also had a coda at the end, another little song, whereas Tubular Bells had the Sailor's Hornpipe. Tubular Bells 2 had a different song at the end. It had a similar structure, started with a piano with a particular beat on there, just like Tubular Bells 1, and then it went through various transitions, which were made a little bit more obvious in Tubular Bells 2, but part 1 also ended with the bolero type of ending, where it started with the bass guitar and then added more guitars, piano, etc. And then there was a master of ceremonies who would announce the next instrument that would be added to the loop. The second album that Mike produced for Warner was called Songs of Distant Earth, based upon a book by Arthur C. Clarke. It was very different from Tubular Bells, and it's very different from the album that we're talking about today, Voyager, in that it had a lot of synthesizers that had a lot of deep bass on it, and we'll talk about that when we get to the songs that are on that album. The third album that Mike produced is today's Voyager, and the song from that is She Moves Through the Fair. This 1996 album is very Celtic oriented, where there have been some influences and some Celtic instruments used by Mike in the past, most notably to my ear on Omadon, which was his third album. This album was very overtly Celtic. She Moves Through the Fair is a traditional Celtic song, and it actually has lyrics, so it's traditionally sung. When you look at the links down below, it'll take you to a couple places where you do have people singing this song with the lyrics, and it's kind of difficult to tie what you hear in Mike's instrumental as opposed to hearing the lyrics sung and the melody behind that, which it's difficult to coordinate the two. But by its own, it's a very nice instrumental melody. And if you didn't know that it was originally sung traditionally, then you would think it was just a nice instrumental. Coming off of Songs of Distant Earth, I had to adjust my listening style because it was very, very different from Voyager. Voyager is a lot more acoustic. And with those traditional songs and those traditional instruments, it seems like it was tailored to be more recognizable to a lot of people, perhaps a group of Anglophiles, which I count myself as. I didn't do a lot of research when I got the album because, again, we're talking about 1996, very early days of the internet. So I only had to go by what was on the album, and I generally ignored what was on the album, what was written on the back, what was traditional, what Mike wrote, etc. So I just considered it Mike's album. Whatever his sources were, he adapted them, he arranged them, produced them, etc. And he did create some of his own songs that were on there. Fully half of the 10 songs on there are traditional songs that were arranged and performed by Mike. 4 songs were his own compositions, and the last song was a remake that he performed by a Spanish Celtic group that Mike fell in love with when he was down in Spain. She Moves Through the Fair, also known as She Moved Through the Fair and by other titles, sounds the most Celtic to my ear. And as I said, it's typically sung. In this case, the picked acoustic guitar takes the place of the singer singing the lyrics. The song, the music is very beautiful. It starts with a breathy ah, 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 or it might be a ba, ba, ba. It's really difficult to tell. I also can't tell if it's actually a choir that's doing the singing or if it's a synthesizer, a sampling synthesizer like a PPG or a synclavier or something else. On the album, there is credits for a choir to the London Voices, but again, I'm not really sure what's used on this particular song. After about 5 seconds of this breathy choir in the background on the beats, there's a change where they do a little twiddle in their voices, da da da, and then let's say a little do-si-do. And then the bass comes in, or it's a deep bass guitar. Sometimes it's difficult to tell whether either of those is being used or the other. The bass plays only 2 notes at the beginning. It plays a low note, doom, and then a higher note, doom, doom, doom. And then after 30 seconds, the acoustic guitar comes in and it starts playing the main melody. At this point, the bass starts repeating 4 notes, doom, 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 and then that repeats for about 8 bars. So at this point, it's very soothing and very ethereal. At about 90 seconds after this first circle of playing ends, we get more instruments added, more layering on by adding a lead guitar and some more breathy exhalations into the microphones. And it might sound like ghosts, which might be a precursor to what the song was really about. At 2.5 minutes after the second circle, where we had the lead guitar that came in and that breathiness, we hear a little ditty before the third circle starts. It's kind of like a marching tune. It's but it's kind of quiet in the background, and it fades out as soon as the third circle starts. There are more instruments added during that third cycle, and then after the third cycle is done, then some instruments stop playing, some instruments kind of fade out, and then we hear that little marching tune again, but it's a little louder. And then as the song finally ends, all of that fades out into silence. So in the end, it's very haunting and sweet, this song. It may be one of my favorites after Tubular Bells 2 came out, and it holds a special place in my heart, which we'll talk about in a second. The lyrics are about a lass who is talking to her prospective beau about an upcoming wedding, and she tells him that her parents are going to not stand in the way. They're given approval of the wedding, and then after she gives him this great news, she moves off through the fair and he watches her disappear into the crowd. Later that night, she reappears to him. However, as she's walking towards him in his house, there is no sound from her tread, which means she's a ghost at this point. She's had an untimely end sometime between her moving off into the fair and then appearing to him at night. But she repeats the promise that they're going to be joined again soon in the hereafter. So that may come as a surprise, or maybe not, because I was kind of hinting at it during the previous part of this video where I was saying some of the breathy voices in there could have been ghosts, and it's quite possible that Mike arranged this song to have that breathiness and that ghostly sounds in the background, just as a precursor or for people who already knew about it. It's kind of an Easter egg, trying to tie those two things together. So that was fun for me. In 2003, when Chocolate was born, I had a Canon Rebel XT camera, very similar to the Canon that we're shooting this on now, although 20 years earlier. I also had a Sony DV cam, and I was shooting videos. I shot videos interviewing my wife the night before when she was in labor. I have a little bit of the C-section, and I have video of the following week. And what I did is after that week, I made a DVD out of it with Final Cut Pro and my Power Mac. The video starts up with the title Week 1, so you know what it's about. This is an opposition of my second DVD, which was Year 1. So after the year was over, I produced a second DVD. So Week 1 starts with my wife being interviewed, the delivery room, and then a whole bunch of stuff that happens, the trip home in the car. And it ends with him having a bath. And I don't remember if it was the first bath, but it could have been. After a week, he had his first bath. And it ends with my wife, who's being filmed, saying, you know, we're all done. All done. And she goes up an octave at a time. And that's kind of become a meme in our house where occasionally we will say, you know, when a task is all done, if we do it in the right tone of voice, and perhaps if we go up an octave, then it's just, you know, instantly recognizable. Not only did the grandparents who live remotely, one pair live up in Washington State, and the other one lived in Nevada. It's not too far from here, but they were remote. They weren't in town. They didn't drop by a lot, maybe once or twice a year, maybe both pairs 3 times a year. But having this DVD of that momentous event was very important. At the end of the video, as I said, there was the bath and the meme. Then it faded out to a second title, and this title was 1 Week. And while this is up on the screen, we hear the first phrase of the Bare Naked Ladies song, 1 Week. It's been boom, and when it goes boom like that, it changes to a slideshow. And on every hard beat like that, which was like every 2 seconds, we get a new slide, a new picture. And it would just go all the way through the song. The entire song played. We had, you know, pictures for every single beat. And at the end, we froze on a picture of our bundle of joy all wrapped up, just coming out of the hospital. So as the Bare Naked Ladies song fades out, She Moves Through the Fair, today's song, starts playing. And then as the credits start rolling, which talk about who was in the video, who the parents were, the date, his entire name, because he's got 7 names, and the equipment that was used, and also the software, Final Cut Pro, and my Power Mac G5, etc. And as these are scrolling up, we hear this lovely song. So I love the song, mostly because it's a great song, but also a lot because of what we did on this DVD. As I said, both sets of grandparents got a DVD. Our copy of the DVD was absconded by Chocolate himself, and he just played the hell out of it for the first 15 years of his life. I don't know the last time that he's watched it, but he watched it a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if he liked this song too, for that reason. So that's it for She Moves Through the Fair by Mike Oldfield. Next time, we'll stay at the Last Resort while we watch the Eagles fly away to Hotel California. And by that I mean the song is The Last Resort. It's on the album Hotel California, and the group is the Eagles. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. So next time, we'll stay at The Last Resort by the Eagles. Now,